What might go right and what might go wrong for the 2025 Atlanta Braves. Yes, welcome on in to Braves Today for Wednesday, March 26th. This is your source of news, notes, and updates on your Atlanta Braves. I'm your host, Lindsay Crosby. You can follow me on X and Blue Sky at Crosby Baseball. You can follow the show on XBraves_today. We have a Facebook page and an Instagram as well. And you can find all of my written work, bravestoday.com. That's the Braves Today Substack, as this is both a podcast and a newsletter. This is the final non-game day version of the show. Things are going to change a little bit as of tomorrow because we will have games to talk about, right? We'll be able to talk about the upcoming matchup against the Padres, the pitching, how certain Braves players have done against those guys, all of that good stuff. That's coming up starting tomorrow. In the meantime, reminder, in the podcast feed and on YouTube from Tuesday the 25th, there is a off-season recap video there. A lot of you who watch this show every day, you're familiar with what happened, right? But not everybody has the time to do that. So I made a 30-minute video that recaps the off-season for Atlanta, right? When Ronald Acuna Jr. and Spencer Strider will be back, why Max Fried's not here, like why he left and went to the Yankees, and all of that stuff. So if you have a friend who doesn't obsessively keep up with the Braves, but is still a fan and wants to be prepared for opening day, send them that episode, audio or video. I really do appreciate it. A little bit later in the show, we're going to talk about some of the Rookie of the Year candidates and who might actually be Atlanta's number one overall prospect when this season is over, assuming Drake Baldwin and AJ Smith-Shawver both graduate from prospect eligibility. But before we do that, I wanted to get into the strengths and possible weaknesses of this Braves roster. And we're not going to use the cop-out of injuries, right? Injuries are obviously the thing that took down the Atlanta Braves in 2024. I'll remind you, Sean Murphy got hurt on opening day. So the original lineup that they had on opening day, those starting nine, Spencer Strider on the mound and all of that, they were together for the entire season for less than one game. And Atlanta was one of the first teams, if I remember the stat right, they were like the first team in baseball history to have 4 players from their opening day lineup miss the final 2 months of the season or something like that and still make the postseason, right? That's a testament to how good this team is. But outside of injuries, where are the strengths and what could go wrong for the Braves? And I want to start off with the strengths, because I think maybe when a lot of us, and I'm probably in this group as well, spend so much time focused on the details of this team, right? Focused on the specific who's going to come in and pitch the 6th inning on your 3rd consecutive game, like that kind of fine level of detail, we sometimes miss the bigger picture, right? We lose the forest for the trees. And I think that's the saying. I think that's right. And it's worth looking at some of the most common projection systems and everything and having a reminder that this is one of the best lineups in baseball. This is one of the best pitching staffs accumulated in all of baseball. So what I did is I went to Fangraphs and I went to their depth chart system. And that is where they have every player that they expect to, if it's pitching, to throw a pitch. If it's position players, every single team that's going to have at-bats and all of that stuff. And the goal is to figure out which units are the best and worst units in baseball. And it's easy to figure out that, hey, the Braves aren't going to do well in any sort of rating for shortstops, right? Like they're going to be... Fun fact, the Braves and the White Sox are tied for last place when you sort by WAR for your shortstops. All of these are sorted by Fangraphs WAR. At 1.9, the Braves and White Sox are tied. The Braves actually get positive contributions from Orlando Arcia for fielding. This projection has Arcia taking most of the plate appearances. Nick Allen gets like 100. And then Eli White and Nacho Alvarez get like 7 apiece. Speaking of Nacho Alvarez, he is on the major league injured list with a wrist issue. We mentioned a couple weeks ago he had not played since late February. Had some questions about that on social media because he got hurt in major league camp. He had not been sent to the minors yet. You can't option down an injured player. He got hurt in major league camp, so therefore he goes on the major league injured list until he's healthy. This actually, I think something like this happened with Herson Waldrop, where they rescinded his option and put him on the IL because he got hurt in the majors, not the minors. This is the difference in Michael Soroka and Ian Anderson. Michael Soroka got hurt in a major league game, so his 3 years of missed time was all on the major league injured list, and he got service time for all of those missed seasons. Ian Anderson got hurt in the minors, and so all of his time being out from Tommy John was all on the minor league IL, not the major league IL, and he didn't get service time for it. So that's a distinction there. That's why Nacho Alvarez is on the major league injured list and not the minor league injured list. But outside of shortstop, this is a surprisingly competitive team, and not just, hey, they're fine. Almost every position, they're, I think at worst, they're maybe top 10. So, catcher, you would instantly think, given the year that Sean Murphy had last year, losing Travis d'Arnaud, counting on prospect Drake Baldwin, you would assume a lot of people, especially the negative Nancys and the haters who are just down on the Braves right now, Fangraphs still has this as a top 10 catching group. 3.8 WAR, right behind the Astros, right ahead of the Reds and the Dodgers. They have Will Smith and Sean Murphy within half a WAR of each other. This is a 3.8 WAR catching group. Top 10 in all of baseball. Everybody told me this catching group was bad and that this team was doomed, right? You look at first base. Guess what? They're tied for 4th. Matt Olson. We talked about this before. Other guys are projected to take plate appearances at first base, but with Atlanta, it's very extreme, right? Matt Olson, 686 plate appearances. Jurickson Profar, 7. Garrett Cooper, 7. That's as close as you're going to get to somebody acknowledging, yes, Matt Olson never leaves a game. So it is tied for 4th in baseball with the Rays. Top 3, Dodgers, Phillies, and Blue Jays. Yes, 2 of those 3 are in the National League. I know. One of them's in your division. I know. That's a common theme here, right? You look at second base. This is another one where the Braves, 3.3 WAR. That is, I can't do math here. That is 10th in all of baseball, right? Ahead of the Phillies. Way ahead of the Mets. That is considered to be one of the best in all of baseball. Ozzie actually, it's not completely Ozzie. It's mostly Ozzie. But he gets actually negative for his fielding. We've had that conversation about his defense. But positive for both his bat and his base running. So you end up with 3.3 WAR. You can go on and you can do this. Like third base, guess what? Second best in baseball. Like Jose Ramirez with the Guardians carries them to number 1. Austin Riley's number 2. You look at left field. And even if you assume that left field's one of the few where Atlanta's not at the very top, right? It's 1.8 WAR, which is like in the bottom 10. One, it's tied with the Dodgers down there. So it's not like you're that far behind. And all the projection systems that are based off of multi-year samples all assume Jurickson Profar is going to regress from what he did last year to just being 1.5 or 2 WAR. Which, you know what? Fine. Left field was a negative for WAR from Atlanta last year. If you can make it positive, great. You'll love that. Center field, guess what? Michael Harris, one of the best in baseball. You're second in the depth chart projections behind only Seattle, behind only Julio Rodriguez. That's it. Michael Harris carries that. Right field, even with Acuna not coming back for a full month, you're in the top 4. It's like Yankees with Aaron Judge, Mets with Juan Soto, Padres with Fernando Tatis Jr., which I still think he's not the same dude ever since the suspension. Braves number 4 with Ronald Acuna Jr. They've got a little bit of Kelenic, a little bit of De La Cruz, a little bit of Verdugo in there. They also have 7 at-bats in left field and right field for Marcell Ozuna, which we all know is never going to happen. Even pitching, right? Starting pitching, they have this as the 3rd best rotation in baseball. Dodgers number 1, Phillies number 2. Again, I know your division and your likely NLCS opponent should you make it there. I get that. But the point is, Braves, 3rd best projection in all of baseball. The bullpen, which I have been told, and people all over social media, every time I post anything on Braves Today Facebook page that involves the bullpen, people swear it's so bad. Guess what? Tied for 5th best in all of baseball. Ahead of the Guardians, who had the best bullpen in all of baseball by far last year. They doubled up anybody else in WAR, and Atlanta was 2nd. Guess what? They have Atlanta still a top 5 bullpen. Provided that health does not take away too much from the Atlanta Braves, because health will impact you. Health always impacts you. Provided health doesn't impact the Atlanta Braves too much, this is one of the best rosters in baseball, and this roster has everything it needs to compete for a World Series championship. And if you're one of the people who insist that this team doesn't, you need to start showing your work, because everything else that we have, projection systems for the unit as a whole, for individual players, everything else says, no, the Atlanta Braves at almost every position are one of the best teams in baseball. But it's not a guarantee. Things can go wrong. And we'll break that down next, right here on Braves Today. But first, today's episode is brought to you by our friends at Chinook Seedery. Listen, these are the absolute best sunflower seeds you will ever have. They are larger, they are sweeter, saltier. Every flavor is just perfect, okay? There's 8 different options. Smokehouse barbecue. It's smoky, little tanginess, complex. It's great. Hatch chili. Get you some heat. Dill pickle. It's sour, tartness to it. It's great. Cinnamon toast. Parmesan and pepper. Jalapeno ranch. Lemon pepper. Or original. Just the balanced mix of salty and sweet. They're so great. Go to ChinookSeedery.com. Buy the sampler. Try some of everything. And when you figure out what you like, you can either just buy a variety pack, buy a case that's a variety pack, and they send you some of everything, or build your own case with whatever flavors you and your family happen to. Use promo code BRAVES at Chinook Seedery for 10% off and free shipping on orders of over $40. If you sign up for a subscribe and save, where they send you some every single month, they offer a 10% discount for that also. So, ChinookSeedery.com, promo code BRAVES. Again, ChinookSeedery.com, promo code BRAVES. Welcome back to Braves Today. Lindsay Crosby talking to you about the final off-season kind of recap before we get into the season. What could go right for the Atlanta Braves? And the strength is, hey, as long as they don't get hurt, you have top 5, top 8 players at almost every position on the field. Right? Your rotation, your bullpen, center field, third base, first base, everything. But when you look at what goes wrong, there are a few specific things outside of just the general injuries could strike that we have to acknowledge can hamper this lineup and this rotation and this pitching staff as a whole. And I'm going to try to take them in different groups. The first one, I think, is if you have one, I'm not going to blame the baseballs. If you have another thing where the baseballs are not flying and everybody's dealing with a little bit of a power outage. Because the way the Braves are constructed, the Braves are built to mash. Not every team does this, but the Braves are built on exit velocity and hitting balls hard. Any sort of material change to the baseballs that make them not fly as far will disproportionately hurt the Atlanta Braves. The flip side of this is if you have some sort of juiced ball like you had in 2019, it will disproportionately help the Braves because they're already prone to hitting big fly balls. More of them that would have been warning track outs will go out. More of them that it will help the Braves. The gain might not be as much, right? If you go from 200 homers to 220 homers, not as big of a deal as some team that's going from, it's not linear, right? Some team could go from 160 to 200. That's a bigger jump, obviously. But a material change in the baseballs, just in general, is going to hurt the Braves more than it hurts, say, the Guardians or somebody, right? But I do think a specific concern is, one, for me, the defense. There's a lot of players on this roster that are very proud of their defense and have put a lot of work into being quality defenders. Austin Riley has worked very hard to get better at third base, and he is now he's a quality defender. He is Gold Glove caliber. He's not 1-1, obviously, but he's Gold Glove caliber. Not every defensive system thinks Austin Riley is that good. Ozzie Albies, I mentioned it in the last segment. Ozzie Albies, at this point in his career, with his arm strength where it is, he is not additive to your defensive rankings. Okay? If he has further deterioration in either his arm strength or just defense in general. Orlando Arcia, his entire value to this roster, we talked about this a few weeks ago, wrote a newsletter on it. His entire value is providing steady and reliable defense. You have a guy in Nick Allen who can do that if Orlando Arcia is not going to be the guy. But infield defense in particular, if your infield defense sags, I do think you have enough guys that can get swing and miss where this doesn't disproportionately hurt you like it would hurt, say, the St. Louis Cardinals. If Nolan Arenado's defense falls off a cliff, which it's already been declining, and if Mason Wynn has a rough defensive season at shortstop, and if Wilson Contreras at first base can't be that great of a defensive first baseman, and if I think Brendan Donovan's going to be their second baseman with Nolan Gorman as the DH, if he struggles, it hurts their pitchers more than Atlanta's. But for the Braves, the defense to me is a little bit of a concern simply because you don't have any other options, right? You have Nick Allen to take over for Orlando Arcia, but you don't really have anybody to replace an Austin Riley, to replace an Ozzie Albies. Some of this is the injury conversation, right? If these guys get injured, the guy going in behind them is obviously not as good. But there's also situations where you don't even have a defensive replacement option for really anybody but maybe Ozzie Albies, right? You can throw Nick Allen in there for the ninth inning if you need to, if something's up with Ozzie. But you're not replacing Austin Riley. You're not replacing Matt Olson. And then in the outfield, Michael Harris is amazing defensively. There's still questions about Jurickson Profar. That's a thing where Alex Anthopoulos talked in the welcome press conference, which if you want to watch that, by the way, is here on the channel. You can go back. On the YouTube channel, we have a playlist that's Braves press conferences. And you can go back and you can watch Alex Anthopoulos mention the defense and how they have some things that they addressed with him on the defense being better. Ronald Acuna Jr. has a strong arm. But his initial reads don't always grade out well. And so his defensive rating overall suffers because his range doesn't come out very good, because he's not getting great jumps on balls. Is he going to be better coming off of almost a year layoff? It's hard to say that he will be. So you have, outside of a couple elite positions, which really is center field, and then when Sean Murphy's in there, catcher, you have questionable defense. Drake Baldwin, that's a situation. My concern would be the running game with Drake Baldwin. You only have one lefty in your rotation, so you don't get the advantage of having a lefty to help control the running game off of first base. And Drake Baldwin does not have the strongest arm in the world. He gets by. It's good enough, but it's not something where you're immediately going to not run on Drake Baldwin. So I have defensive concerns about this team. A lot of these guys are also streaky. We saw how streaky Matt Olson can be last year. Austin Riley's been streaky at times. Ozzie Albies can be streaky. Orlando Arcia is just stuck in the bad part of the streak, right? And just the bad part of being streaky. But this is also a roster that is prone to streaks of being good and bad. And if multiple guys are in a slump at the same time, again, you don't have any options, right? You have maybe one guy off the bench you can pinch hit in Brian De La Cruz. That's about really it. You're not pinch hitting Nick Allen. You're not pinch hitting Eli White. You're not pinch hitting Chadwick Tromp. So who you got's who you got. And a couple things to be concerned about. Things that could hurt the Atlanta Braves outside of injuries. In the bullpen, you have so many guys in new roles. I mentioned yesterday, Pierce Johnson is not a guy I am completely sold on in his ability to be the eighth inning setup man. I'm just not. I've seen him have enough bad outings. He's so reliant on one pitch. If he doesn't have that, you got to get him through those three batters and get him out of the game. If you have a situation like that, but some of your new acquisitions don't click right away, Hector Neris, Reynaldo de los Santos, whatever it might be, you could have some instability there outside of Raisel Iglesias and your two lefties in Bummer and Lee, right? So there's things to not necessarily love about this roster and things that can go wrong. Now, that being said, I do feel like as currently constructed, we saw it against the Cubs on Monday, this roster can put up plenty of runs. These pitchers can keep other teams off the board or minimize the bad innings, and this team should be in almost every game they play. We'll find out really quickly the quality level of this team because after 4 games against the Padres, they go and they do 3 against the Dodgers. Going to be really interesting to see what happens there and how that goes. One of the pitchers starting a game against the Padres, game 4, is going to be prospect AJ Smith-Shawver. We'll talk about the Rookie of the Year chances for him and Drake Baldwin, as well as who might be the next top prospect in the system next, right here on Braves Today. Final segment of Braves Today. Lindsay Crosby here on Wednesday the 26th. Again, tomorrow we're going to do a breakdown of this matchup, how the hitters have done against these other pitchers, how the pitchers have faced against these hitters, all that good stuff. Keys to the series, all of that coming tomorrow. Quick heads up, we talked about a live show after the Thursday night game, or after opening day. That might not happen. There's an announcement I may have to make tomorrow. This show's not going away. This show's not changing, but a really great opportunity that I think you guys are going to love that's going to involve some work after some games. So stay tuned for that. That announcement will be coming in the Thursday show. Rookie of the Year, AJ Smith-Shawver, Drake Baldwin are your 2 rookies who are going to be on the roster on opening day. They are both on betting boards for Rookie of the Year. Not going to name the name of this sports book because they've not paid us for that, but it's a very prominent one, and they have a network associated with them you'll see on Braves broadcasts. You can figure it out. They have AJ Smith-Shawver as the number 5 NL Rookie of the Year favorite. It's Dylan Cruz of the Washington Nationals, then Roki Sasaki of the Dodgers. Surprised me on the order there. Matt Shaw of the Cubs, Bubba Chandler of the Pirates, who I don't even believe made the team out of spring training, which is wild, and AJ Smith-Shawver. And what does AJ Smith-Shawver have to do to be in that Rookie of the Year race? And I think this is a little bit of a tough bet for me because it feels, unless you are a generational pitcher, like Paul Skeens. Yeah, Paul Skeens won Rookie of the Year. Paul Skeens was also in the Cy Young finalists. That was a generational season. Is AJ Smith-Shawver going to have a season like that? Reminder what Paul Skeens did last year. 23 starts, 133 innings, 11-3. 11-3 in Pittsburgh. With that lineup behind him, he goes 11-3. 11-3 with a 1.96 ERA. 133 innings. He struck out 170 batters. It's a 33% strikeout rate. He walked 32. It's a 6.2% strikeout rate. Allowed 10 homers on the year. Hit 6 dudes, right? Threw 2 wild pitches all year. So, Rookie of the Year finisher, was an all-star. Started the all-star game, if you remember right. 3rd place finisher in the Cy Young. 19th place finisher in the MVP. And it wasn't unanimous for Rookie of the Year. He got 23 first-place votes. Jackson Merrill got 7 first-place votes. And then Jackson Churio and Shota Imanaga were the final 2 guys. Shota Imanaga, 29 starts, 173 innings, 15-3 record, and a 2.91 ERA. And he got 0 first-place votes and 4 total vote points. That's it. 4. And he went 15-3 with an ERA under 3 and made 29 starts. Using that logic, it feels, I'm not going to say impossible, but it feels very difficult for AJ Smith-Shawver to win a Rookie of the Year in 2025. He would have to have a Spencer Schwellenbach type year of quickly adjusting and then just going on a run all year. And he'd have to do it and stay up almost all year. And he's one of the few starting pitchers they have that has options. So there's always a risk of the Braves needing some flexibility and sending him down for a couple weeks. Or the Braves having to worry about his workload. I don't think they should, but they might have a workload worry, and so they try to send him down or something. The Marlins tried that with Max Meyer. It was dumb. He came back and wasn't the same dude and got rocked a little bit. Don't do that, but you have to be aware of it. Drake Baldwin is also on this list. He is tied for 8th. Him, Jordan Lawler, and Zach Veen. So Jordan Lawler of the Diamondbacks, who did not make the team out of spring. Shortstop prospect. I've had some people ask if we can trade for him. My Diamondbacks, friends who cover the Diamondbacks, have said the organization's been very clear they're not going to trade Jordan Lawler. They might trade Tommy Troy, the other shortstop prospect, but they're not going to trade Jordan Lawler. The thought process is he will slot into 3rd base after Eugenio Suarez is done. Zach Veen, I don't see it. I've never been a Zach Veen guy. But for Drake Baldwin to stick on the opening day roster and then for Drake Baldwin to win Rookie of the Year or even get into the finalist, he has to stick all season and he has to absolutely rake. And let me give you an idea of the kind of stats it takes to get into that top 3 conversation as a catcher, okay? 2022 Adley Rutschman, 2024 Austin Wells, okay? So Rutschman of the Orioles in 2022, he's the runner-up to Rookie of the Year in the American League. He plays in 113 games between catching and DH. And barring an injury, you don't have DH at-bats open in Atlanta, right? He made 45 starts at DH that year and 100 and 104. Oh, no, wrong year. 22, he had 23 starts at DH and 84 starts at catcher and played in 93 games behind the plate. He hit .254 with an .806 OPS, 13 home runs, 42 RBI, 70 runs scored. And he was the runner-up in 2022. That was the Julio Rodriguez year. He hit .284, 28 home runs, 25 stolen bases, and he won it 29 of 30 first-place votes. Austin Wells, last year, 3rd-place finisher. And it was all AL East, right? It was one of his teammates. It was Luis Gil actually won it. And then Colton Cowser of the Orioles came in 2nd place. But Austin Wells, 115 games. He played in 115 games. He had 96 starts behind the plate in 110 total games. He subbed in sometimes. And 18, and then he made 2 appearances at DH, but it was almost all catching. So either you have to play a bunch of DH, 30 games or so, or you have to start over 100 games based on recent examples. He hit .229 with a .718 OPS, 13 homers, He had 55 RBI and 42 runs, and he was the third place finisher in Rookie of the Year. The issue you have here is Sean Murphy has already been cleared to start doing baseball activities. For Drake Baldwin to stick at the major league level and to make 100 starts, he's starting 2 out of every 3 games. He has to get to 60-65% share of the playing time, which means he has to come out and rake. And he has to be good enough defensively, and Sean Murphy has to struggle in those departments where they prefer to go to Baldwin over Murphy and give him the lion's share of the time. So while both of these guys are in the top 7, 8 of Rookie of the Year voting, I'm really not inclined to vote for either one of them. I'm not inclined to put money on either one of them. It really feels there are guys that have a much better opportunity to have a large enough role on their teams to get it and or perform well enough to jump up in there. Do I think AJ Smith-Shawver can have a very good year? I do. Do I think he could have a good enough year to... Could he beat Shota Imanaga? Maybe. That wasn't enough. You had to have a Cy Young caliber year for Paul Skeens to win the award. And even then it wasn't unanimous. Jackson Merrill had a great case for it. So it doesn't feel very likely. We never got to Atlanta's top prospect at the end of the season. If these two guys graduate, we'll hold that for a different day. The hope is we can get to that in sometime soon. If you're listening on audio, do us a favor, leave us a 5-star review. If you're on YouTube, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell so you know when we drop that next episode, and maybe also leave us a 5-star review. That'd be super awesome. Until next time, this has been Braves Today.